Jake Gyllenhaal's Roadhouse remake had a controversial streaming-only release, and it begs the question of how much the movie could have made if it was released in theaters. The Roadhouse remake has had two major controversies surrounding its development, with one of the biggest centering on the format it was released in. Director Doug Liman intended to boycott Roadhouse's streaming-only release, though he later reversed that decision. Despite its streaming-only release, Roadhouse has received massive viewership since it debuted on Amazon Prime Video. There were several reasons for Roadhouse's success, ranging from Post Malone's cameo in Roadhouse to the satisfying ending of Roadhouse. Because of its success on streaming, a natural question arises: how would the Roadhouse remake have done with a theatrical release? There are several factors that would have gone into its box office performance, but there are also ways to estimate about how much money Roadhouse could have made. How much the original Roadhouse movie made. The original serves as a good benchmark for how the remake could have done. One of the best benchmarks to compare the Roadhouse remake to is the original Patrick Swayze version. The original Roadhouse was poorly received by critics when it first came out, but it had a pretty solid box office return. Roadhouse made $30 million domestically in theaters in 1989, which, adjusted for inflation, is equivalent to about $75 million today, via Box Office Mojo. There aren't official statistics about how much it made internationally, but if it was similar to its domestic performance, Roadhouse could have made about $150 million adjusted for inflation. What other action movies suggest about Roadhouse's remake? Roadhouse likely would have been an average release for the genre. The original Roadhouse is a good benchmark, but it was released in 1989, which was a very different time in terms of how action movies performed at the box office. It's also useful, then, to compare the remake to more recent examples of the action genre. One of the best and most recent movies that Roadhouse is similar to is The Beekeeper, which made $152 million worldwide. The Beekeeper had similar star power to Roadhouse, as it featured Jason Statham, but it was also an original film, whereas Roadhouse continued an existing franchise, so it isn't a perfect comparison. For action franchises, there are some good recent examples that give very different ideas of how Roadhouse could have been received. The Equalizer 3 made $191 million, though that movie likely would have outperformed Roadhouse both due to Denzel Washington's higher popularity in comparison to Gyllenhaal and because it's a more direct continuation of its franchise. On the other hand, Roadhouse would likely have done better than recent bombs like Expend 4 Bless, which only earned about $38 million. The box office performances of recent action movies seem to indicate that Roadhouse would have been just about average for the genre, around $150 million. Jake Gyllenhaal hasn't had a big box office hit in years, outside the MCU. His past films are usually critical successes that do alright at the box office. Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal, with his helmet off in Spider-Man: Far From Home. One of the main driving forces in box office success is how much star power a film has, and there's a problem with Jake Gyllenhaal's popularity. While he is a prominent, well-known actor, his movies often don't bring in wide audiences. Gyllenhaal's most financially successful movie in recent years, by far, was Spider-Man: Far From Home. Gyllenhaal wasn't the main factor in that movie's success, though, as it was bolstered by Tom Holland's popularity and the fact that it was a major release for the MCU.